glitch over here. Let me go ahead and do a quick transition. Oi, sorry. My stream earlier today and whatnot. This has just been one heck of a day. Woke up today to a blue screen of death restart cycle. Can't get out of it. I have to completely reinstall Windows.
Tales of our endeavors proliferate.
did pull the thread off last time, so get that real quick. Of moving around, I think there's a special kind of knot that can that's when your needle accidentally goes to part of the thread. So one refresher wants to deal going to get to see me change the cross stitch this time because I have to move a finished. Oh no, I still have a section in here. That's right. Okay, cool. So I don't think I did that offline, so let me check real quick. And I didn't. Okay, cool. So I'll do that, and then you get to see me change it. It's supposed to be like that. Yeah, I love that thread back too. I honestly don't remember what cross stitching was like before I had that because I've never seen it. Georgia, I think. Could have been California. I know in Mexico, if we lived in Mexico, we didn't have a store where I could get stuff like that. So it was either California when I was in school before I got my first assignment in Georgia. A lifetime ago. Alright, so section that I'm working on is right here. So it's a little brighter. Yeah, I'm going to start right up here and work my way down. Again, this is not one that fills everything, but it's close enough. Yeah, okay. Now that I'm looking at it, I can actually see where, because you remember cats from last time, I was talking about how some of these were slightly off, and so I was just doing my best to make it look like it was supposed to, so that the remaining open slots would be right. This bit of white thread, which is really hard for you to see there, but it does distribute it here and here. So this is that original stuff that I was talking about. The very first things that I did were similar up here in a slightly different color, some of the very first stuff I did. That bit is off. That means from the very beginning, some of it's been off. And that's when this thing was mostly empty, and I was having to count from points. When you're counting like anything above 20 of these, it starts to get really confusing if you're not dead paying attention. And I was probably doing something else while I started. So, my fault. But this is the spot where I need to start. So. Attention to the Discord channel, which there's a link to it right there on the screen. There is a sketch that's been drawn in here, and that is from my artist. He's doing something. He's going to be doing some stuff for me later. He's sharing some of his work. This is the same guy that did my cover for my book, guys. This here, do a little tie off. It's one of the other nice things of coming back later and tying off if you have one of those things that kind of stretch too far and you have about it. You're tying, as you're putting new stuff on, you should cover it up. Hold it tight. So this section right here, this will do like one more color. And this section here, I'm pretty much filling up these two bottoms. There's two swaths here and right here. What I have to do, let's see if I can zoom in just a little bit more for you. Make sure it's good and focused. So there's a swath right here. And right there, I'm pretty much filling all of those in. This section up here on this side of it is going to be done. So how you doing today, cats? I know you and I have been chit-chatting most of the day. From the Game Mechanics channel, he's been playing all day today. He's having a good old time. Playing, what was it? Oxygen Not Included? It's an interesting game that I might play sometime. I have so many games I need to play through. Since I've got this job, this work schedule worked out with some of my volunteer stuff. Nothing to add anything, just playing, trying new games so I can see what they're like and decide if I'm going to play them any further. And if I'm going to do that, I can play it on stream and let you guys know, hey, this is a good one. You should try it. Like I said last time, I have a really nice box when you get to that point where you can just fill. Oh, then how many of these do I have to do here? What kind of an angle am I going in here? It's just, nope. I get to fill the slot. And I do believe, actually that's one right there. So I'll make sure I come down. This is one of those ones where if you come back up the same hole, you're just going to pull out the one you just finished. So you kind of have to go to the upper right corner to pull it down. And here's, it took me a moment to get that thread through there because we're so far in and there's been so many thread changes. The back side of this is covered in places where I've tied off. So I'm basically shoving a needle through a huge set of knots in order to get it through so I can create the stitch that I need to stitch. Make sure I keep it centered for you so that you can see it all. The section I'm working on. I think next time before I start I'm going to put this above me. That's kind of why I like having that second camera, so you can actually see what I'm having to do. It's not showing everything because it's there we go. Let's move it over there. I'm trying to decide when I get the next camera if I should just set it up, like leave this one right there when I do this stuff and just set the other one up down here to catch me, or move it every time I do this so that you have at least a nice camera viewing me and then the nicer one viewing this. I have it. I'm not really sure what I'm going to get. I'll honestly win. When you are essentially self-employed, you have to be mindful of where your money's coming from and where it's going. After all, cats, we don't want to have to turn on, cut our sub to the game mechanic. Got to get that 24-hour stream, right? Which I'm not even sure if that was his idea. I'm feeling that was Eminem on the edge. I'm pretty sure Eminem on the edge. I'm pretty sure that was his idea. 'Cause he seems to be the one that's most prolifically pushing this up. Game mechanics he's quite willing to do it, but I don't sense the same enthusiasm from him as I do from Eminem and Edge when we talk about it. Game mechanic talks about it. We just read Eminem and the Edge. Was the one downside to that multiplayer game of Civ we did, Cats, is because I ended up with the team with the game mechanic. I was pretty much listening and communicating with the same person that I had been all the time. I didn't really get to hear anybody else until the very end. I think I ended up running King on our channel just to confirm that we realized he was on the way to winning. And there was no way to stop it. So we didn't play ourselves. And the time was to find out that we could have just given it. I think at that point he was actually close enough that we didn't have to give up. He was winning the tour. I think he won a culture victory, which that's a time-consuming thing. But I guess when all your enemies are wiping each other off the planet, it does make it easier to make sure that everything is done. I mean, it's easy to make sure that you get all the conditions for victory. Sorry, I just looking at something. I'm not 100% sure, but I think I may have accidentally filled a spot. Needed to be filled by the last card, but it's only 2 squares. At this point. This swath of color coming down right here is short 2 squares because it's like there's going to be a gap. Oh, look, I missed this gap here. Switch to some other when I get to the eagle, when I switch back to doing ones where full stitches are required. I'm gonna really have to pay attention because I got so used, because I've been doing this one for so long, I got so used to not doing the full stitches. At least that one's easier to fix than doing full stitches that you have to later do. First one I did looked like crap, so I erased Iron Man and started him over. Just a few lines here and there. Well, we would never have known that if you hadn't said something. You could have gotten away with saying this was the first one. Not that he can, because he's not listening. Let me tell that to him. Before I think about getting a new camera, I need to do what I'm going to do to expand this desktop here. It ends right here, but on the other side of the wall there, it's about that far from the wall, so I could definitely have some more space back there. I still want it to come out a little, like that much. Because I want to drop wires back there. But I want this part out here. That would give me more space to work with. I've actually considered for doing this getting one of these stands that you can use, where basically you attach this wooden frame here. Someday. Last time I looked at one of those, $90. Probably could find one cheaper online. If you've seen the movie Robin Hood Picks the Thieves, you've actually seen one of them. She was doing needlepoint, but she was doing it on a frame. I think I finished that color. Yay! So is the painter around, cats? Showing those pictures I put in the Discord. Very nice to the painter. In the Discord, real quick before I move on to switching this, I'm going to mark off colors. So I'm not going to be over on this side for a while. I need to make sure the colors are properly marked off. The amusing thing was like I came back and people had been talking like I was there. Well, any complaint? just delivered feedback here's an example of what I was talking about. I went through a section and marked something off, but I never actually really did it. There's a whole section right here. Right there. This little white gap right there. All of that, is supposed to, according to my sketch, is supposed to be filled in. So, case in point. One of the most obvious places over here. I'm going to have to do multiple tie-offs. That's annoying. Looks like I'm going to have to do 1, 2, 3, 4.
I want you to show me how to get to know
6.
someone like you,
7.
someone like you. I want you to know me, 'cause I know then you'll see
8 total
you
tie-offs.
can be true,
That's annoying.
you can be true. I want you to see what I see in us, something so real, something so
But the nice thing is I
real.
don't have to
I
go
want
all
you
the
to see that this is a love that we both feel,
little more
that we
educational
both
stuff.
feel. And how will we ever
piece right
know if
here
the love will ever grow
is basically
without
tension.
trying, without trying? And how will we ever see if we are meant to be?
When you get really close to the edge here,
It's
and you
terrifying.
work, it's got less footage. So it gets really annoying trying to keep it taut because it's kind of bouncy. There's a lot in this section. And then grab the other side and twist. That's how tight. It's not bad, but because it's over,
It's a losing game, it's a losing game. But this time it's more than another lot of war. This ain't the same, this ain't the same. They say love heals all, it makes it all alright. In time, my heart still feels the breaking, but you make my world so bright. You feel so right, you feel so right. And how will we ever feel that what we got is real? There's no denying, there's no denying. And how will we ever see if we are meant to be? It's terrifying, it's terrifying. And how will we ever know if the love will ever grow without trying, without trying? And how will we ever see if we are meant to be? It's terrifying, it's terrifying.
And I'm back. Consider this list because it keeps switching back and forth between these very different songs. But I mean, for doing creative, they're perfectly fine. Alright, let's get back to this. So, pair of pliers. As I said before, the top ones are easy because sorry, I wasn't really sure of how high the audio was. So let's turn it down a little. Alright, so as I said before, the top ones are the ones that were pre-installed. They came with it, so they are pretty easy to undo. It's the other side where things get a little more interesting, because you, on the top side here, with these, the nut here, I mean the nut and bolt combination here, this part has a inset that keeps it locked in place so this thing doesn't turn. On this side, it doesn't because it's too big. So that's where the pliers come in. These aren't the ones I normally use, but they are effective. So got that part. And now I see this is really wobbly now. So now let's do the last part. Come on, get a grip. You can do it. Okay, so now I can start rolling. You can see, so basically over here, I'm rolling it, keeping the other part tight against my body there. So you can see it in that one, so that it stays nice and taut all the way across, because I don't want it to be very loose as I'm rolling it in. It's already kind of going in at an angle. I had to readjust it at one point. Take one side completely out of the other. Okay, so it's far enough along now that I should start paying attention to how far I need to go. So it looks like I am going to have to go over to the down slope of this other mountain here. Not very far beyond it. Right there. Pretty sure that's it. Yep, right there. Okay, so then I can tie that off, and I still have plenty of room to do the other side. So this is where it gets kind of fun. You kind of have to like hold one in place and do the top part, because you know that one will spin and that this will stay in place on it. There we go. And then this side, this is the side that you pull taut, so it's not up near the top here. It's going to be a little wobbly, but down here in the middle, nice and taut. So we do exactly the same thing as before. Precedence. What was that? Who knows? So spin it tight, and then righty tighty. Okay, so the top part is held. So now down here, I tighten this side, because it's the first one I get to. Tighten this side, and the other side is the one I want to make sure is pulled taut. Grip it and tighten. I think before I continue on to another project, I will probably either replace the entire thing or at least get better on a nut and bolt combination for it. Okay, so now comes the fun one. Kind of have to pull it tight, grip it. Okay, so I've got it gripped. Pull it tight and tighten. I usually ask for help when I do that one, just because I want to make sure it's good and taut. But Zoe's doing schoolwork, and my wife, Michelle, is, I think she goes by Artemis online, so Art. She's keeping the kid on task and doing other things that she needs to be doing, so don't have that third arm to help me. Alright. So we are ready to continue. So we got still have a lot of thread left, not anywhere near having to change. I mean, I'm going to have to eventually, but not quite yet. Moisten. Find the point, which is right there. So yeah, cats, you can see we're on the other mountain now. This is the down slope. So right here, here's the down slope. You know what? I just realized that camera, while it's, yeah, that's what I thought. There we go. It was backwards for you. So this is the left slope going down. I mean, it worked, but still. So this is the left slope. This is the slope down, and here's the eagle right here. So I'm going to be doing sections right here and over. Right there, and more heading over here. But as I said, like 8 tie-offs I'm going to have to do, so annoying. Yep, right there. Because this one right here I'm tying off to do 4. Just 4. There are advantages to not having as many colors, because the pieces that don't have as many colors tend to be less detailed. Hey, InstaFluff, thanks for that host. You are awesome. I appreciate it. If you're not, hey, I get to test out a command. InstaFluff, you get to be the first one. Is it gonna work? Nope. I still haven't gotten those things to work. Anyway, everybody go follow InstaFluff and throw all your biddies at them with charity, #charity. And thank you, InstaFluff. You're kind of looking at the back of it because I'm tying off one. As soon as I tie off this thread, I'll show you the front. This is a piece for a fallen soldier's family. I've been working on it for quite some time, and I decided I wanted to be done with it, and so I said, well, let's start streaming it. That'll keep me motivated. So there you go. There's the left side of it. So yeah, it is. It is. And so you can see what it's going to end up looking like. There's the picture. So the soldier's name is going to go right there. His unit and his date of birth and the date he died. So, and then this will be sent to the family. When I get done doing all of this, because there's still a lot of work to do, when I get done doing all of this, I will have my mother, who's the one who put me onto this idea, contact the organization again, and they will then pick a family and notify them that something's coming, and then I will. I wanted a way. It is. I wanted a way to make something that would show this family that their sacrifice did not go unnoticed. That their son or daughter, husband, wife, we understood that they paid the ultimate sacrifice and wanted to do something for them in return. It's small in the grand scheme of things, but I'm pretty sure they'll be able to, even if they don't know anything about cross-stitching, I'm pretty sure once they see it, they'll understand the amount of time and dedication that was given to this tribute piece. I have many friends who deployed. Thankfully, they all came back. No, they didn't all come back the same. My best friend ended up getting medically discharged because he didn't come back the same. So, Zoe joins us. Hi, Zoe.
Yo,
How's your homework?
good. I'm almost done.
Okay.
You gotta see this. There's I'm watching a scenic video underwater.
Well, I'm not going to come right now, so you can have to show me.
Shark.
Oh, whale
It's
sharks.
huge and it's feeding.
Yeah, eating all that krill and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, you can show me later. I'll come look later. Zoe's really into whale sharks. We got to go to Okinawa in 2014, and we saw their aquarium there. They had some massive whale sharks. And we also went to the Atlanta Aquarium, I want to say the same year, or maybe before we moved. It was either before we moved or it was that very same year, because Zoe went with us for Dragon Con 2014, but at Dragon Con 2015 we weren't able to take her to the aquarium. So she's seen lots of whale sharks. So she's a big fan. And my previous unit, my last unit that I was in before I separated, their mascot was the whale shark. I think Zoe ended up leaving one of her whale sharks behind for like her whale shark dolls. She was downsizing her dolls for them. Okay. Oh. I didn't realize there was an extra one right here. So instead of 9 total tie-offs for this color, instead of 8, I'm gonna have 9 total tie-offs. As I said before, there is an advantage to having not so many colors. Can't get bogged down in the details, but another issue I have being close to this roll right here is that it sometimes can be hard pinning down the thread and then pulling the needle through so you can tie it off nice and good. Flip. So InstaFluff, do you have any hobbies that you take part in? Painting, sewing, wood carving, game development? So there you go. That one little tie off for two squares. You have too many hobbies and stuff, Fluff? My wife, who just walked into the room, can commiserate. How would you like me to refer to you? By your name or by your online name?
What do you go by?
Huh?
What are you going by?
My online one. But I'm also an author. They all know my name. Ow.
Art is fine.
So Art does lots of art. She has lots of things that she can do. There's just not enough time to do them all.
Jack of all trades, master of none. It's a jack of all trades and master of none.
Jack of all trades, master of none. That is true. You just described my grandfather. The thing I like to say about Art is she can learn how to do anything. 'Cause I've seen her do it. Yeah, I know I could just say fluff. I just kept I kept looking at your name and going InstaFluff. Yep, Fluff. Fluff is Fluffy. Everybody go follow Fluffy. He'll share his fluffy bits with you and you guys can all go raid somebody. It's interesting when I stumble across channels, the things that people do to engage with their community. Hey, as you like to say, Fluff, lurkers are welcome. We like lurkers. So you lurk and enjoy what you see. So that's the nice thing about something like this is you can put this on in the background while you're doing something else or watching something else. And if you really want to hear what I say, you can go back and catch it later, either on Twitch or on YouTube. Which, if you guys see the thing at the bottom, I'm not really sure what is wrong with this. Yeah, these chill streams are nice. I like them. I follow a couple creative people just because they're so relaxing. Looks like the app thing for the music isn't currently working, and I have to actually adjust the little social media thing at the bottom. Guthron is only good for the YouTube and the Instagram. For Twitter and Facebook, it's Nidfar. I'll fix that later. But yeah, I was saying to Cats yesterday, I like to make content that I can then go back later and just chill while I'm at work. Now I don't, because I can work at home and actually watch live. But the place I used to work in, the only thing we could watch was YouTube. So me and the rest of my Pixel Sharks teams, we would play and stream, and then when I went to work during the week, I would watch them. And we do multi-hour streams, so there'd be lots of content to listen to. And the key to making good content is make what you want to watch. Even if if nobody else watches it, at least you have something to watch, right? It's okay, Fluff. Everybody mispronounces my name. When I was a teacher, I was a teacher in Korea for a year and in New Mexico for 3 years. And for the first 2 in New Mexico, I completely gave up on getting my students to pronounce my last name correctly, which is Guthrie. It's really kind of easy. You say Gu and then the number 3. They couldn't get it. It was always Guttery or Guttry or Gunthry. I really don't understand where the N comes from. People just, I guess, feel like they have to put it in there. At this point, I'm just like, hey, if you're even identifying me, it's fine. And at work, no one ever called me, unless I was in trouble, or there was someone really high-ranking around. No one ever called me by my name. They just called me by my handle, my call sign, which was Glitch, because every time I worked, guaranteed guaranteed something would go wrong. The contractors that worked on our systems, they were the ones who really picked up on the nickname, and they could always tell when I got on mission, because as soon as I did, something would break. Yep, I did it for 1 year. It was kind of like I just graduated college, I need something to do for a year. Let's go overseas and teach. So that's what I chose to do. It doesn't actually say any of the song names right now because the connection. As Fluff, you weren't here earlier. I had to completely reinstall Windows today, so I lost a lot of things that I had to. Luckily, I install most of the programs on different hard drives, but some of them that require special DLLs to be installed on the main drive, when those were lost, it basically required reinstalling. OBS was one of them, and so in the process, I lost all of my old scenes. Luckily, I had just recently created these on Stream Elements. So I was in the first 10 minutes of this stream, there's nothing but music playing because I'm frantically recreating these. But the music is coming from this station right here. It's one I created just so I could have some stuff that was fun to listen to and some stuff that was contemplative. Works both ways. Basically, get a nice chill but not drowsying effect. Okay, where am I going? Oh, sorry. Where am I going next? But yeah, Fluff, I taught English as a second language when I was overseas. In a school that now no longer exists. It was fun when I was going to get a clearance for my last job, trying to explain that. Like, we need to talk to your previous employer. Like, they don't exist anymore. I don't know what to tell you. But ironically, the thing that held that whole process up had nothing to do with my former employer. It took us about 8 months to finally figure out what was holding them up, and it turned out that it was because they couldn't figure out where I'd been for a 6-week period in 2004. They called my wife one day and asked her, because I was at work, they asked her, "Do you happen to know where he was during these dates?" She's like, "No, but I'll take him down and I'll ask him." So I get home and she tells me they called, they wanted to know where you were during these 6 weeks. And she told me the dates, and I actually paused. Walking across the room, I paused. Because the dates they had specifically requested were the 6 weeks when they literally knew where I was 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because it was the 6 weeks I was in basic training. A place where after that I spent 20 months in tech school, where they also require 100% accountability of you pretty much all the time. We did recalls so many times. So when I finally talked to the investigator, it's like, "You really couldn't figure out where I was when the Air Force actually had kept track of me every hour of every day?" Still so much confidence in our public servants, and me, and regarding our public servants. And the part that was the icing on the cake is I started the whole application at basic training. I think I'm done with that. Nope, I'm just starting it. Yep. When I contacted my flight chief and told them that, apparently it got all the way up to the commander because someone got in trouble. I was finally able to go do my real job instead of cleaning up after everybody else on casuals within a week, having been on hold for almost 8 months. But I made good use of the time. I started my master's program while I did that. I enjoyed that program. It was quite good. Not that all those college degrees are very helpful now. I've got 4 college degrees, 2 associates, a bachelor's, and a master's. Most of the time, they don't even matter. All right. So, cut this off. Let's go do another one. By the way, sorry, I have to check to see if someone messaged me back. Nope. Technically supposed to have a meeting tonight. It's my first time going though, so I'm not exactly sure what time they meet. I think it's 7. I suppose if I just show up early, I could do some writing until they show up. I know where they're going to meet. That's the easy part. Alright, so the next part is... Oh nice, this is a longer one. We are going to go right... Oh, that's nice. Here. I get to fill some places, that's nice. Makes it a lot easier too. Sorry, I didn't realize the music had gotten turned off. Not really sure how that happened. I was probably resting on the key. Oh, come on. Grab the thread. Grab it. Grab it. Grab it. Oh. There we go. As I said at the beginning of the stream, I really like this needle because it's got a nice point for getting exactly where I need it to go. But the downside is it's got a really nice point, which means sometimes it's really hard to maneuver through pieces of thread that you don't want to actually hook. Win some, you lose some, right? On your screen it probably looks like there's not much there, and it's because I'm only filling 2 squares in the middle here. And then I'm gonna make a little jump. I don't like to make them that often, but sometimes it's unavoidable. Because I technically could have tied them off. Technically. And I'd have 9 tie-offs to deal with. I'm actually probably going to have to get some more thread here in a bit. Wasn't sure when I would run out, but I'm getting there. So Fluff, if you hear this, it's okay if you don't. What were you playing today? I know you played that game yesterday. I put it on my wish list. I can't remember the name right now. But you beat it in 1 day. Nice job. You were also streaming for a long time. Oh, you didn't play today. Well, that's okay. It was a cool game you played yesterday. I liked it. I will eventually get it and play it. Is it one of those early access games? I don't think so. I couldn't remember you. I remember you saying something about it, but I couldn't remember if it was something you got early access to or what. I know that the Humble Bundle store just had a bunch of games that were dirt cheap for their end of summer things. I got like 20 games that were all like 99 cents or cheaper. And they were all games that I'd been planning on getting, that I had on my wish list on Steam. Like, well, since Steam's not putting them on sale, I'll just get them from Humble Bundle. Another way to support charity if you so desire. Okay, so now we have a small one right about, okay, so we were just right here. There we go, put that over there. Make sure you guys can see everything. So we were just right here in this section, and the next one looks like it's right there. Right in that area right there. Again, it's really hard to see because it's a dark color around it, but there is a spot right here. There. Yep. I like Humble Bundle. Usually closer to the Extra Life event, I'll pick up a bundle of games that I can then gift, and I'll give them away during the event for people that make donations during the event. Which, by the way, if you guys would like to support the team or myself in our fundraising efforts for Extra Life, for now, actually, you could just go over to Fluff's channel next time he's on and throw some bits his way with #charity, because he gets, I think that's the one. If that doesn't work, it's just 17, but I'm pretty sure that's the one. That'll take you directly to my page, where I am currently fundraising in support of the hospital. Of course, Fluff. Of course, I like to help everybody I know. So definitely go over there, go his way. Oh, throw some biddies, as they like to call them, and put that #charity on there and make Twitch donate money to Extra Life. And don't worry, Fluff gets all of his bits. But this year I'm supporting, not really sure. It says it's all the way up, but again, I had to reinstall Windows, and okay, maybe, I don't know. It's anybody that's had to mess with Windows at all knows with Windows 10 that turn it up a little there. You can let me know if that got better. The sound, all of the sound, anything has to do with sound with Windows 10 is an absolute nightmare. It's like you set everything the way you want it, and you turn off the computer and come back to it later, and everything's undone. I've had more issues with the sound part of Windows 10 than I have anything else. So you let me know if that's better there, Fluff, and I'll finish the thought I was saying. Normally I support. Okay, good. Normally I support Providence of Alaska, Providence of Anchorage, which is a Children's Miracle Network hospital that Extra Life supports, because that hospital saved my niece's life when she was born 26 weeks early, kept her alive multiple times. Provided excellent care for her and for her mother when she was there. And so that's where I've been fundraising. Eventually, my goal is one of these years to fundraise enough to replace one of the beds that they kept my niece alive in. Oh, you know what? Actually, I should undo that. There's a gap that wasn't filled by a previous color that I'm going to have to fill. It costs like $10,000 to replace said hospital bed. So yeah, one of these years I'm going to do that. Probably reach out to the hospital and kind of partner with them. The downside to having a really short thread, you kind of have to get your head right down next to it. So anyway, this year I've decided to switch hospitals just for this year to help fundraise for the UNM's Children's Hospital, because a friend of the family, their child is suffering from leukemia, and I'm going to assume that holy moly is the $10,000 per bed. But anyway, he's been suffering from leukemia and receiving care at UNM's Children's Hospital. Yes, it is a very expensive bed, and if you just look up NICU pictures, you'll probably see images of it, the things that the babies are in that keep them alive. When my niece was born, there's a picture of her. I don't know how soon after it is, but there's a picture of her where she's gripping I think it's my sister's finger, and her entire hand can't make it around her finger. That's how small she was. It's like her fingers couldn't close. It could have just been the angle. Yeah. So she was born pretty early, and that bed kept her alive. But this year, I decided to switch and support this other hospital because, as I said, friend of the family's son is going through leukemia. And my wife, Art, she was in youth group with the father, and the mother is best friends with my sister-in-law, my brother-in-law's wife, which is technically my sister-in-law. Although we joke around with each other that before we figured that out, that we were nothing to each other, which is really funny when you make that joke on Facebook and nobody realizes what you're actually saying. So he, like I said, he's suffering from leukemia. The UNM is providing, they most of the care that's provided at a CMN hospital is provided for, but there are some medical bills that do pile up, especially if he needs to receive extra care from another facility, which I think he has been. So the parents are starting to get swamped with debt, and I would like to also bring attention to their GoFundMe in the process of doing this, so that people who are feeling extra generous after supporting the hospital will go toss some help their way. Because as we all know, medical bills are expensive. It's not like it's been a hot topic, in conversation of the past, decade. Okay, so I think because I don't want to keep leaning down on camera and to moisten my thread after I tie this one off, I think I'm going to call quits for this piece of thread. And we've been going for hour 10 and go a little bit longer. Gotta get this piece done after all, right? But yeah, one of my friends, a former coworker, who also when I was at DragonCon, I had my first ever book signing, and he drove 3 hours to come down to see me and get his book autographed and buy copies of all the other Inkshares authors that were there. So this is a good friend. He messages me out of the blue like 2 or 3 months ago saying, you need to increase your goal. At first I didn't realize what he was talking about until I checked my email, and he had gone in and donated enough to push me over my first goal, which I was just kind of barely hoping because of all the other things that have been going on. I hadn't really been pushing the event. I was hoping to barely make it to that, and I did. So now we're on to the second goal. This is actually Fluff. This is how I got into streaming back in 2012 when I first started doing Extra Life. The team that I was on, I had to stay home because my wife had to go to some class or something. And so I had to stay home with the kid. And so I did all of my stuff online and streamed it. And that's when I got into streaming. In the first couple of years I would only stream around that time, but then after that we started pushing to have more content during the year, so we weren't just showing as the team, we weren't just showing up around Extra Life and then vanishing. Oh, the next section's a nice big one. Definitely gonna need new thread. So, set that down right there. And I need to pull up Kat's favorite thing. The thread bag. Adjust the microphone here for a second so it stays in there. Yes, Fluff, if you haven't seen it yet, this is my, there you go. This is my thread bag. And it's got places to organize the thread, which I unfortunately don't get to use because I pre-filled it with something else that I was working on right before my mom came to me with the idea of doing this one. I need to look carefully here because I think this is the wrong thread. So what happened to the pewter? Oh, there it is. These were the... On the last stream, I unfortunately thought I was continuing with these two colors right here. So I got it all set up and everything, and only realized then once I had it set up, like, oh, wait a minute, no, I'm done with that color. But luckily, the purple, the light purple, I could still use for the next color. But that meant I ended up setting it over there, not putting it in here where I normally keep them. Yes, lots of thread. That's all that thread you saw in those bags there, that's for a different project. The thread for this project, it's unfortunately stored right there. Right there. On these two little things. I was thinking about that yesterday, or not yesterday, 2 days ago, Fluff. I know for a fact that I was working on it in 2013. Know for a fact that I was working on it in 2013. Which means my mom probably approached me about it in 2012. It is possible I started it in 2011. But I haven't been, because there's so many other things I've been doing, and my previous job took so much of my time, I pretty much only got to work on it once a week, and that was at church, because it helped me pay attention. Now I pretty much, this is when I decided to work on it, to try to give me more, not just more time, but to actually dedicated time to it. And putting it on here also has the double added effect of, you know, people will tune in and watch. I mean, you tuned in and Kat's tuned in, and last time there was a couple others that showed up right near the end, including one of Kat's friends. So when you know people are going to watch it, it kind of motivates you to keep doing it. Although I was really surprised that this, how much, because before I moved, I had different people that would interact with me on the stream, but they were in a different time zone because I lived on a different continent. Since I moved here, with my schedule changing all the time, I hadn't really been able to set on times when I could like guaranteed stream. So the interactivity with my stream kind of slowed down. Really cracked me up that I decided, you know what, I'm just going to stream some creative today because I don't feel like writing. Oh no, I did writing earlier in the day. I wanted to take a break. That's what it was. And this one turned out to be one of my more interacted with ones. Well, people are going to watch what they're going to watch. And I like doing this, so again, remember when you're separating your threads, spin it with two fingers off to the side like that to help keep it from twisting. That'll help avoid knots. Knots can really derail you. I've had some doozies of knots, and I was explaining on Tuesday that I tend to be a little, I mean, there's some of it's just stubbornness, but I really like to conserve my thread, especially when I was over in Germany, because I didn't know where I'd get replacements from. I mean, I could order it online, but there's no telling what the quality would be unless I ordered from like particular vendors. So when I was over there, I became really conscious of how much thread I was using. And as you commented when you first came in, like this was an impressive large cross stitch. You were looking at the back of it. So that's the front, right? Looks nice and clean, except for a couple marks right there that'll get covered up, right? This is the back of it. And I don't really interact with people out, you know, who cross stitch, but the few that I have told me that this is like an amazingly clean back. And if you can even see a little bit of what the picture looks like, you've done a good job. And then you can see most of the picture in this one. So the net result, yeah, and that's because I conserve thread. The net result is it looks really good in the back. I didn't understand that until someone who I knew cross-stitched asked to look at it, and when they flipped it over and looked at the back and were just stunned at how clean it was. I don't know. I don't know what this is. Yeah, it's, well, I mean, if you look at the back, it kind of tells you a little bit. Like you can look and see here, when I'm looking at this, I can tell this was like this one right here with that little stretch right there. That's early on. Yep. This, let me see right here, where's my needle? This one right here. Yeah, that's just a tie off that I didn't go back and trim. But on the other side, there was one that was very obvious to me that I was covering up a knot, because there was a knot that came through and I didn't realize, and so I was several rows beyond where the knot was. Okay, no, here's a perfect example. That's actually a knot right there. Let me get it up as close to the camera as I can. That right there is a knot that I didn't realize was there. And I've also, I didn't realize soon enough to go back and do something about it, because normally I would have cross-stitched it in like I did on the other side when I was showing cats the other day. There was a section where you had two pieces that were coming together from pretty far off, and I was like, what's the story here? Oh, I remember. The knot was prior to, but I realized before I cut off the color. And so then what I did was I just looped the thread through it, and when I pulled that stitch tight, it pulled the knot, it pulled the excess thread into it. I did that a couple of times, and it just fused it to the back. I didn't do that for that one. But yeah, exactly. It tells the story. You can look at it and see, you know, how much time they spent, you know, look at all these points where they had to tie off and stuff. Look at all these cross-stitch back and forth. They were clearly doing a lot of work right here. Somewhere on here, I know there's a really obvious one where the threads just I had multiple knots, and I almost decided to just cut it and pull it out and start again, but I had gone so far with that piece of thread. I think it was one of the darker ones too. I had gone so far with that one that I just couldn't bring myself to undo what at that point was like 3 weeks of work. So I ended up stitching, mostly looking at the back, and constantly stitching that thing in from every angle I could. I came in with colors above and below it, trying to do every color I could that touched that area, and every time I got near it, I would loop it through and just pull that thing down as neatly as I could. And if I could stitch over it, I would, so then it was fused in there. I'm pretty sure that was this piece. It might have been a previous one I was working on. If you hop into my Discord there, Fluff, which you see the link right there on the right. If you join that, you can go look at the Clips channel. A friend of Kat's, who came near the end. Sorry, I'm moistening my thread and putting it together. A friend of Kat's showed up who's a painter, and I mentioned that my wife did some paintings, and they wanted to see. So I put some pictures in that Clips channel. But there's also a picture of a At least I'm pretty sure it's in there. It might have been in a private chat. Let me look. Clips. Nope, not there. But you'll see the paintings. But I can quickly rectify that. It's another piece that I did. No, Discord. Where are you? There you are. Let me go to the Clips channel real quick. I know this makes for riveting podcasting. Picture. There you go. So that's posting to that channel. That is a piece that I did years and years and years ago for my wife. We ended up using that exact piece. We got a little ceramic make of it for our wedding cake. It was the top of our wedding cake, for the bride and the groom. Now for that one, I actually changed the colors. The colors on that one are, she was supposed to be green, and so that people here know what I'm talking about, let me quickly add a window capture for, is it going to let me capture it? I may have to download the picture. There we go. It'll let me capture that. Window capture, properties. You gonna let me capture it? No, it's not letting me capture it. I'm not really sure why. Not like that, at least. But we are smart. We will get around you. Screen grab. I'll just grab a whole screen display. There we go. Nope, the other one. There you go. So you should see that blocking the entire channel now, which is fine. Actually, I'll put it back that way because that way you can see it better. There you go. So that piece was originally done for my wife. The dress was pink and the hair was blonde. That was the only difference. Obviously this was pink, and I changed those colors so they would match her better. This one pretty much matched my coloring okay. So I'll go ahead and remove that. Ha! We beat you. OBS, we beat you. But yeah, so now the people watching can see it as well. That one didn't take me nearly as long. See, something I discovered when I was in college was that when I cross-stitched and went back later and looked at it, I could remember what I was hearing, what I'd been hearing when I looked at the cross-stitch. And I worked on that piece and another one when I was in college. The other one, unfortunately, I was never able to give to my wife because it was stolen when someone stole my laptop. But that one in particular, I remember it was a garden entrance. And I would stick that one down. In case you're wondering, I'm trying to thread my needle right now. There we go. I would stick that one down on the desk in front of me when I would take tests. And when I got to a question I couldn't remember the answer to, I would look at it and I would remember what was being said when in class. And eventually I would use it as a way to map through my head, to do neural mapping, to find where that data was saved. It was actually quite effective. It was so effective that one of my teachers thought I was stitching answers into it, which at that point I handed it to him and I said, if you can tell me where the answers are in that, I will pay you because I don't see them. I mean, I see them, but I don't see them in the stitch. And he looked at it. He actually looked at it for a solid minute. Like, I don't see him. And I explained it to him, and he's like, okay, whatever works. It was kind of similar to something that one of my other teachers did. I did a couple of classes at a community college, and one of them was American History 102. American History 2, basically, from, the Wild West onward. And he let us, when we came to a test, he let us actually bring a cheat sheet. But he wouldn't tell us what to put on it. We would basically have an idea of what the test would cover, and we would have to write on there what would help us remember what we needed to pass the test. Loved that class. It's the only class, there are 2 classes that I've ever taken that I got a perfect score in. That was one. The other one was a master's level course called America's Indian Wars. which I was the only one that took. They let me because I needed it as an elective. I needed to take it. The professor was willing to do it for just one student. So I mean, I was the only one he was grading. So it wasn't like he could just like, oh, I don't feel like grading. No, I was it. But I managed to net. When I got my final paper back and saw that I'd aced it, I was like, oh yeah, 2 classes now. But that first class I was talking about, the American history one, I mean, everything was subjective. Even the tests were subjective. A specific size paper you could use. Yep, exactly. Some of them will make it like a 3x5 card, and you get people that would write in really little letters, like kind of like this stuff right here, sized. And some of them even wouldn't put even. One of the ones I saw, they didn't even put words on there. Not words that you would understand. It was something that they had associated with, like a number or just a single word that they. And when they see that, it would help them remember something that they had always had a hard time remembering. So I mean, really, it's only as effective as you make it. Yeah. Yeah, when I taught social studies my 3rd year, I didn't just teach them the information they needed to pass, because there's standardized tests they have to take. And I ended up teaching the information, but I did not like teaching them information. I wanted to teach them skills. So I spent like the first half of that year teaching them how to research, just how to go to the library and comb through encyclopedias and look for other books and stuff to get all the information they might need. And I had them just copying everything, just get everything, all of it. And of course, being 7th graders, they're like, oh, why are we doing this? And they only complained so much because it was actually a really easy task for them. They weren't, all they had to do was sit there, and they could talk while they did it, in the library, obviously quietly, but they pretty quickly realized that when it was research day, it was an easy day for them. But eventually we got to the point where I started giving them assignments, and I would say, okay, you've all researched this particular country. I want you to tell me what your population is like in this country. Give me some demographics on it, racial mix-up, things like that. And then I'd have them turn around and do the same thing for the state that they lived in, which was the key for the school, because 7th grade was the year they were learning all about New Mexico. And that was after the beginning of the year when we were doing government. I actually had them form a government. They formed a Congress inside the classroom, and we would pass bills and stuff so they could actually experience what it was like. For the Electoral College, I had them all make votes for who they wanted to go up and make a decision, and then like 5 people would go up and cast votes according to the people that sent them, so they could learn that. It was all, processes. Don't, just showing them. And a lot of those kids had a hard time reading at their grade level. And so I told them that when it came to doing their classwork, that I would help them by lowering the level of what they were reading to their grade level, the level they were supposed to be at. So like the Constitution is written above 12 level, grade level 12 reading. So you need to have a collegiate level of reading to be able to understand most of it. Well, when you're talking about 7th graders who can barely read on a 1st or 2nd grade level, that's way above them. And so I went through and I rewrote the Constitution, just simplifying it. I still have that thing somewhere. I wrote it down to a 7th grade reading level, and I told them I wouldn't go any farther. And then we went through and we would go through the stuff, and then we would practice it. And that's how I taught them about their government and how the states interacted versus how the state's government worked versus the federal government worked. That was all we did. We did that for a couple months before we switched to the researching project. And every day I would have them, because we were supposed to emphasize writing, every day they would come in and they had just a simple assignment. There would be a question or a statement on the board, and I didn't care what they wrote. I didn't care how good it was. I didn't care how clear it was. I just wanted them to convey their thoughts on a half a page. Just say it. So they got used to every day coming in and writing. And that one took about half the year before they finally stopped complaining about that one. But again, it was when they walked in, they knew exactly what was expected of them. So there was none of this coming in and, getting bored, distracted, and dilly-dallying. They knew when they walked in the door that they had an assignment that they had to get done. And if they didn't complete it, they didn't get the point for the day. So that got them on task. There was still a couple, that didn't feel like they should do it. Once they realized that they weren't really getting graded on it, that it was just a do it or pass or fail kind of thing. You get it or you don't. Most of them eventually wised up and just started doing it. Just called them short takes. And I tried to make them topical to stuff that was going on. This would have been 2002 to 2003. So, if I'm remembering correctly, isn't that when Columbia crashed? When did Columbia crash? We were just discussing this with my daughter last night. Columbia crash. Yeah, February 2003. We did a thing on that where they talked about would they still want to be an astronaut? If they could say something. I remember one was if you could say something to their families, what would you say? That one, I can't believe I forgot this. That one ended up being one of the best ones. Those kids became so articulate when it came to thinking about potentially being able to interact with the families that lost their loved ones in that crash. So there was a lot I could do with that one. And it easily satisfied the school's requirement that every subject be focused on reading and writing. For me in social studies, that was a lot easier than the math teachers. My wife, the way she did it was she just did word problems. She came up with her own word problems for them. She was looking through some of those yesterday and reading them. They're quite amusing. Yeah, I would love to go back to teaching, but I don't like the way our schools are now. Now maybe it'd be a little bit better than what it was when I was doing it. One can hope, but it wasn't the actual teaching that was the problem. It was all the bureaucracy that went with it. There was just too much that we couldn't focus on the students. It became really hard to do some of those things I was trying to do with them because I needed to spend some of that time documenting everything that was happening. It was just impossible to keep up with it. Which is actually honestly one of the reasons why I settled on the research project, because it gave me entire class hours where I could work on paperwork that needed to be done. Some of it, you understand when you're doing it why you need to do it, like 504s, how you're fulfilling them, so that parents would not know that you're working to help their kid learn. Yeah, exactly. Pre and post teach logistics. It's just a nightmare. My wife and I, we didn't have a kid at then. We were staying sometimes till 7, 8 o'clock at night. It was actually how I ended up discovering one of my favorite Nova documentaries, the Battle of the X-Planes, because one night Michelle had to stay to get some work done, and so I just sat in my room and I reorganized it. I turned the TV on to PBS and just happened to catch that. I liked it enough that I bought the DVD. The other issue that I also disliked was that with some of those kids who needed the 504s, I understand the need for a 504. If I had been in school instead of being homeschooled, I would have had one. My daughter has one. My wife had one. I get it. I understand the point. But I had students who were they were relying on the fact that they couldn't fail to not do their work. And we're not doing these kids a favor when we teach them that they can do that. And I failed some of those kids, and the school went in and changed their grades later. I was like, I don't want to be a part of this. So when the time came to figure out something else to do, it wasn't hard for me to realize I needed to move on. Alright, I don't need to finish. Just jump over here. That one apparently I'd filled in already. Yeah, it's a requirement in the law that's in the laws that said that the students couldn't receive a grade below C because they technically weren't. There were certain limitations, and some of the kids that was very true about, and those kids had no issue with that. I gave them the grade. I gave them their floor was C, and I gave them the grade based on that. Technically, that was true for all of them, but some of them, it was very, very obvious to anyone who taught them. It was obvious to the entire teaching team. That wasn't true for that kid. That the modifications to the learning environment and to the lesson plans for them were quite effective. Particularly some of the kids with ADD, because I have it, my wife has it, my daughter has it. It runs in the family. Quite familiar with things you need to do to adapt to a child that has attention deficit disorder. And so, very obvious to me when someone was playing that up to get out of work. But there was only so much you could do, and eventually I just got tired of the fight. So that when our school principal, who turned out to be extremely corrupt, laid off half of the school because she was afraid what would happen to her because the government was threatening to take over the school. She laid off half the school, my wife and I included. And at that point I just said, you know what, I'm moving on. I substitute taught for a year, so I got to teach a lot of things. I refused to teach at that school. Ironically, her excuse for firing all of us, laying off half the school, was she didn't want to have the government come in later and say, oh, you have to fire them all, and then maybe stuck trying to find teachers for you to replace you, most likely subs. So I want time now to find long-term replacements for you. What she ended up with was, instead of listening to us, we said, hey, if that happens, we can become your subs, and you'll have the same teacher throughout the year, which would have made sense. They actually ended up never happening to the school, but they did get more attention because they suddenly had all kinds of subs to start out the year. She never found them, and she ended up using substitutes the entire year, and not even long-term ones. They would only have them for a couple weeks at a time. And I remember getting called once by the new vice principal, who was new that year. The previous vice principal, no one had realized quite how much he had been holding off some of the more quick-fire decisions by that principal. So it was a new vice principal that year who was basically just a yes man. And I remember he called me at one point and begged me to come substitute in the class that I had been fired from. It's like, you know what? I'm going to go to the other middle school and substitute teach there. I actually ended up with a reputation as a substitute, as the one substitute you didn't want to have come in, because I actually knew I'm in business. I knew what to do. Saw through all the crap that they would normally do it. And my wife took advantage of that and had me recommended to sub for one of the classes that she helped out with, as she was like a long-term sub for a resource teacher. So she was, for a couple of the classes a day, she was going into another classroom and helping. And that teacher was going to be gone, and she had always had issues with the people in that class. I didn't have to tie that off. I don't know why I did. I could have just kept going. Anyway, she so when she knew that teacher was going to be absent, she requested that I be picked, do it, because I was going to be in the area anyway. And so they called me and was like, "Do you want to do it?" I'm like, "Sure." So I subbed that day. Man, those kids didn't know what hit them. They just were. They expected a substitute. They didn't expect a teacher. And they came in fully prepared to just completely waste the entire hour. And I canceled the activity that they were supposed to be doing and actually made them do a lesson. Because I knew what the subject was, the topic was, and my wife had tipped me off. She was not there that day. So yeah, the next time she was there, when the teacher was back, all she had to do was threatened to bring me back, and those kids never bothered her again. Because she actually said, I could actually have him sub for me even when the teacher's here, so you still end up with him. And some of those kids had crossed paths with me in other classes. They found because they had that experience, they came in and they sat down at their desks and they weren't causing problems and stuff, and they learned quickly that if they had done that the first time, they would have been able to watch the little show that the teacher had set up for them. That was the big unfortunate thing for that. That's a lot of the subs there, they would just plan a movie for that day, which was just like a signal to the kids to misbehave. Yeah, I know. I mean, they're at school. Why should they have to learn something? Oh, gosh, teacher. Don't you know what this is? It's supposed to be our day off. I'd say probably the most interesting, and by interesting, I don't mean this in a good way, days of teaching I had was 9/11. I was actually at school. We had just arrived when the second plane hit, and I went to return to my classroom because I knew students would be showing up eventually. But I decided to go early just in case they decided to come, if the case they already knew. So I had the TV on and I was watching the highlights, that what was going on, what we knew at the time, which wasn't much. And the students showed up, and while they were in class, the towers fell. Yeah, I was teaching during 9/11. I had a classroom full of 7th graders, so 12 and 13-year-olds, and I was the one that had to explain to them what was going on, try to make sense of it. And the second class, because that class, it was a language arts class, it was a little different than when I taught social studies. We had two class hours with them instead of just one. So I had them for I think it was a little more than 2 hours. I can't remember the exact time. Anyway, the second class that came in, one of the students was absent. And while we were in class, I realized who it was. And I knew that where she was. And the reason why it was significant was because, one, her family was of Arab descent. And two, they were in New York when it happened. And no one could get word because the phones were all dead. And the students, I didn't say anything. The students are the ones that figured it out. I was kind of just like, okay, she's not here today, whatever. It was halfway through the class when the students realized, and that was when I remembered, oh, she told me she went to New York. They figured that out themselves and just went apoplectic. I then had to calm them down. It was an interesting day. Nothing got taught that day. But yeah. She was fine. They were at Newark at the airport trying to get out, and all the planes were grounded. But with all the phone lines down, they couldn't call anybody to let them know they were okay. So we didn't know for 3 days the third day after she came back to class, and that was when she got a big welcome. I didn't care that because she walked in late. I didn't care that everything that had been going on was over because we were doing a read through of Harry Potter with the actual unabridged thing. I just stopped it and rewound it a little bit and gave them like 5-10 minutes to be happy that she was back. She was one of the few that graduated on time because I was there for the year they were supposed to graduate, because my brother and sister-in-law were in 7th grade the 2 years that I taught, one language arts, one social studies, and I told them I'll be there, and I was there. And only, I think, less than 5 between the 2 years actually graduated. But yeah, so people, always ask the question, where were you on 9/11? Like, I was in a classroom of 12 and 13-year-olds trying to make sense of the world for them. And then in, was it 2? Yeah. Well, 24/7 internet was around, but it wasn't high speed. When I was in Korea, I discovered what high-speed internet really was, and was disappointed in the U.S. when I came back, because I had like top speeds. Every building had top speeds there. So when I came back to the States, it's like, holy crap, we're in the Stone Ages when it comes to the internet. But yeah, cell phones. The iPhone was 6 years away when that happened. The phones at the time that we had, the big things at the time were the flip phones, the ones that would actually flip up like the tricorder. Yeah, it was an entirely different world back then. And then the following year, when I was teaching social studies, that was that March of 2003, we invaded Iraq. And we watched, I made them watch some of the stuff because I didn't know if they could get it at home. And in particular, I made them watch the day that we took Baghdad. Because I said, look, regardless of which side of the aisle you fall on regarding this invasion, this moment, when they pull that statue down, is something that people are going to remember. It was very hard to explain to them because for one, there was so much, the information was all wrong, because when they first got there, we were still under the impression that it was an accident. Yeah, why didn't you just tweet? Facebook didn't even come around for another 3 years, so it wasn't like you could post a status about it. Sorry. Yeah, it was definitely an interesting day. I saved, for years, all the newspapers. I eventually ended up getting rid of them because it just wasn't convenient. There was no way to conveniently turn them digital once we got that ability. But they followed me through, I think I finally started to let them go in 2011. But every day I would go to on the way to school, I would stop at the gas station, and the guy already knew when I came in. He knew exactly what I would buy. He started ringing it up before I got to it, because I would buy 4 newspapers every day. And I liked having those around, because then it allowed me to keep being able to talk to the kids if they asked questions. But that first day, why? That was the biggest question. Why? And being keenly aware of the fact that one of their classmates was American, but Arab American. You couldn't just give in to the fear mongering that was going on, because then they would turn around and look at their classmate and go, why are your people doing this? You couldn't say that. You had to clearly delineate for them. Then these are crazy people that are doing this. And that no one, like most of the world, would not condone what just happened. Heck, say what you will about our relations with Russia and China, but when that happened, they offered help. At the very least, it didn't get in the way when we went to do things. So, yeah, it was an interesting, which you fast forward to now, in the past several years, with all of the refugee crisis, it's like hearing the same thing all over again. Having to explain the same thing. Having to have conversations with my daughter, because she's in a very international. We were in Germany, and so the refugees were pouring in there, so needing to have the discussion with her there, and then moving here. And this place that we've settled down here is an extremely international community. I think it's the county that we're in is one of the most diverse in the country, if not the most diverse. I know it's pretty high up there. Going to Walmart here for us was just like going to downtown Frankfurt, because Frankfurt is so cosmopolitan, it's so international. So I told my wife, because she wasn't here when we first got here, and I told her, I said, yeah, you can go to Walmart and you're going to feel like you're in downtown Frankfurt. She agreed when she finally got to go to Walmart here. So, and the school reflects that. It's very diverse. So you can't just have the blanket statements about certain people going around, because you have a kid who's then going to turn around and she's going to go to school, and you need to make sure that she can understand the difference between the people that she sees on TV doing things and the people who are sitting in their house next door to her watching the same thing. Yeah, I like Frankfurt. It's a cool city. Very, very international. Business language is English, so anybody there says they can't speak English is lying. Or they just don't want to deal with it. But if you persist, they'll. The trick that I found I had 2 tricks that I would work with. If I ran into a particularly stubborn vendor, generally not in the cities, these would be the ones that were outside the cities, who just refused to speak English to me, I would just start talking to them in Arabic. They would switch to English pretty quickly then. But inside the cities in Frankfurt, the trick to getting them to switch over to English willingly was to start trying to talk to them in German, which is good practice. You want to be able to do that, but they would always know that you were an American or that you were a Brit. They would always know, and so as soon as you did it, they would switch over to English right away. And it's like, okay, we could do that. In my village, they kind of got used to the fact that I couldn't speak it, I could understand them fairly well, because I learned it when I was a kid and then just lost it because I didn't use it, which is why we do things with my daughter, like have her stream Minecraft in German. Helps her maintain her language. So when people would talk to me, it was surprising to me how much I could follow. Some of that also stems from the fact that German and English have a lot of similarities, so that helps a lot. But yeah, it would surprise me, and the people in my village got very used to, very quickly, they figured out that they could go ahead and answer me in German, and they would say something in German, I would respond to them in English because I understood what they said. At my wife and I's favorite date spot, that was of particular note there. I mean, obviously when you go into someplace like a restaurant, there's only so many words they're going to use, but I think some of those waitresses were intentionally trying to test the limits of how much I understood. They found them on occasion. It was one of those people that you would get these looks every now and then from them, like, you've been here how long and you still don't know the language? And then they would hear my daughter speak, and then we would kind of get these looks of, okay, you may not know the language, but you did right by her. Because that kid, if you want to hear how natural she sounds speaking German, go check out, you can go to youtube.com/Guthron to see them, or you can just look at my past broadcasts. I did a vodcast of them last night. You can see her listening to me and interacting with me, but then she'll just switch right back into German without even missing a beat. And she has the sound. She can make it sound so that when she speaks German, she doesn't have an American accent. Working very hard to maintain that. We make sure that every weekend she gets a multi-hour conversation on Facebook Messenger, via video chat with her best friend, so they can talk. And then of course there's the Minecraft stream, and she also reads a lot of books in German, and if she has the opportunity to do some screen time, if she's earned it, actually not even if she's earned it, we've been trying to make sure she gets some language screen time every day. She does half of it doing German and half of it on Spanish because she wants to learn Spanish now. And then after that, she wants to learn French. It's like, dude, kid, you keep this up, and you meet all of your language goals, you are going to be so employable. Oh yeah, she definitely wants to learn Spanish, and she didn't want to when we first moved here. She wanted to learn French next. Part of that was because her best friend, one of them was of French origin in her family. I think it was her mother, and we had a lot of people in the church we attended there who could speak French. So that was what when we got here, I asked her if she wanted to learn Spanish. She's like, no, I want to learn French next. Then I took her to the pool, and she met a kid here whose first language was Spanish. Couldn't really understand her in English, we weren't even halfway back to the apartment when we were done, when she's like, okay, I need to learn Spanish. And of course I asked. He's like, well, there was that kid. I couldn't speak to the kid. She didn't understand anything I was saying, and I don't like that. I want to be able to talk to her in her language, not make her learn my language. First, I had to take a moment and go, I love this kid. She's got such a big heart, and she understands that yes, when people move somewhere, there's some integration that they need to do, but it's not easy. And if you can speak their language to them, it can help. And second, the linguist side of me is going, yeah, my daughter wants to learn another language. She has actually been bilingual since an infant, because we taught her baby sign language. By 6 months of age, right around there, 6, 7 months, a little murky now. That year was a little bit of a long one. She was able to tell us when she was hungry, when she wanted milk, and like a month after that, she was able to tell us when she needed her diaper changed, because, let me get a good look, say it, milk. This is milk. And it took us a while to realize when her hand was down here that she was excitedly putting her hand together whenever Michelle would offer that. And diaper is you just pat yourself right here. That one took a little longer for her to get. And after that, we started teaching her more, daddy, mommy, cup. This is cup. Bird. I still remember some of them. We had her learning baby sign language there was I can't remember now. There was a PBS thing that she took where she was learning it, and we would always say the words with her when we did it. And it's a form of ASL, form of American Sign Language. It's just some of the things are simplified, but it's based on that. My wife found a video of her when she was about a year old, year and a half, where they were doing some kind of online game to help her learn her letters. And she still, even though she was, fully able to say everything in English and say it verbally, she was still signing everything she was saying, all the animals. So, yes, exactly, because most of them don't learn how to say anything until they start being able to make sounds when they're older. Da, ma, stuff like that. Being able to just look at this person who you can't actually speak with and just go, and then they feed you, that means a lot. And they make your diaper clean. That eliminates a lot of the crying. So baby sign, I think, what was the signing time? Signing time, that was what it was. So we would put her in front of that. She would have one lesson a day where she would learn learn baby sign that way. We had a book that we had for a while that also helped us, and she did that 3.5 years, almost 4 years. Yeah, she was almost 4 years old when she started to get better than us. She started signing things to us that we didn't know, and that was when we had to make the decision: do we want to take the time and learn sign language ourselves, or do we want to kind of just move on, let her continue at the level she is, and then work on other languages? Because at the time I was still learning Arabic, so I started talking to her in Arabic. I would say everything to her that I could in both languages. Where's my needle? Oh, there it is. And then we got the opportunity to move to Germany, and I was like, German school, which was hard for her, but the one thing that we can look back on with that and say with pride, she finished first in her class every year she was there in German. Something that the teacher did not make a point of highlighting to all of the other German students and the other parents. She would let us know in our private meetings with her. It was the one thing that she was she was always excelling at. And being the linguist father that I am, I taught myself German when I was a kid. I studied Koine Greek in college. I started to learn Korean when I lived there, and then started learning. And then when I enlisted, I chose to be a linguist and picked the language I got. And I got the language that I wanted in Arabic. And at one point I was also learning Klingon, but I decided just to stop that one because I needed to focus on Arabic. Okay, we made a lot of progress today. In fact, there's only one more bit. I'm going to go ahead and knock this out. And after I finish that, mark it all off, and then I'm going to call it quits. It's just about dinner time, and I'm hungry. Weren't you supposed to be lurking, Fluff? I've been talking to you for quite a while now. Not that I'm complaining. I just remember you making a point of saying, I'm gonna lurk. I'm gonna lurk. A point about this cross stitch I'm working on. Normally when I do a cross stitch like this, prior to this, I would focus on the central point, so in this case it would be the eagle. And do that first, and then I would work on the peripheral stuff. But I knew with this one in particular that the peripheral stuff was going to get so tedious that, well, thank you. We've only talked about part of it. That I decided to do the peripheral first, and it's still been tedious. So I'm looking forward to getting to the eagle. Oh, I got lots of cool stories. I'm an author. And I know how to tell them. Okay, this isn't funny, but it's kind of, as an author, it's one of those things that authors find cool. So while I'm finishing this up, I'll tell you this one, okay? So not this year's DragonCon, but last year's DragonCon was the first time that Inkshare's authors with published books were at a con together. Well, Comic-Con was the first one. There was two that were there with another one who was there for another reason. But the DragonCon was the first one where we went together, without, on our own to try to, to establish a presence, stuff like that. And we went out to eat that Saturday night, I think it was. And they had noticed that I looked down, I sounded more down than they had experienced me online, and that particularly that my wife looked down and depressed. And so then I told them about how right before we left, we'd finished a rather tense vacation with my parents. Always fun. But the week prior to that, our cat had died. We'd had to put our cat down. Something that we weren't really prepared for when they actually did it. We knew it was what was happening, but we just didn't realize what kind of a reaction he was going to have. I still see that clearly in my head, that look on his face. And I didn't necessarily need to describe that part to him. I was just trying to, vacation. We want to go here, and we're paying for all of it, so you're going to go. That's what that was. Again, I appreciate it. I really appreciate it. But it wasn't, vacations with families are always complicated. I love taking my daughter to Legoland. I love the fact that we got to eat lunch on the coast of the North Sea in Sweden. And we went to Berlin and saw what we did. But let's not pull any plugs here. It was always stressful to be on vacation, regardless of which family you're with. So, yeah. So when I was talking to the authors, I didn't focus on the fact that, what actually happened to him at the vet. I focused on what we were missing. The fact that he had been like the one creature in the house that was always happy to see everybody show up. He didn't care who you were. He was going to come to the door and he was going to talk to you, and he was going to be happy to see you because you were there and you were the only thing that was important to him. And when you worked the kind of job I was working, it was such a depressing line of work. Coming home to that was huge. And then suddenly it was gone. And he was always willing to cuddle with you, and then suddenly that was gone. So that it was like the light had just been sucked out of our world. And our other cat, he's still around, but he was also sick. So it's like, are we going to lose both of them quickly? So yeah, I started telling them that basically the same way. And one of them, he just kind of slammed his head down. Gosh dang it, why did we ask an author to tell us about how they lost their cat? It's like, this is why I write stories. We missed that cat. His name was Spock. He was one of the smartest, most talkative cats I've ever known. We had all kinds of tricks that he would do. Little did we know that the same week he died, another kitten was born, and 2 months later we adopted that kitten. And her name is Peggy, and she is also one of the smartest cats we've known. I mean, she actually may be smarter than Spock was, and that's saying something. I mean, she's learned almost all of the tricks that he knew, and has shown that, like, if this tells you anything about how smart Spock was, Spock figured out how to use his claw like you would a tool. I'd see him, the one example, egg yolk, he went and he pricked it just enough to break the yolk and spill it out everywhere in the bowl, but not so that it got on him. And I've seen him do other things like that, where he would pick something up. He would reach into a bowl and pick up the food and eat it like that and not spill it. Sometimes he got too much and he would spill it. Other times he was just pulling it out of the way so that he and his brother could eat together. But when his brother wasn't around, I'd see him go up there and he didn't want to lean over, so he would just pick it up. He was using his paw like a tool. Cat was smart. Peggy's smarter. We're no telling how smart she's going to be. Okay. She's not as talkative as him, though. She has her own ways of being talkative, but she's not as talkative as he was. All right, let me pull this down here where it belongs. There we go. Turn that back on. Oh, yeah, I should probably rotate it. Ha ha, I'm upside down. Ah, there I am. Still zoomed in pretty far. Okay, so that's it for today. Man, we were on here for a while. 2 hours plus. I finished that color, though. That's the good news. I'll mark it off as soon as we get off. I'm at the point where this thing is pretty much falling apart. So next time I'll be starting another color. I'll probably preset the color out, so I'm all set, so I'm not doing anything. Yeah. This is actually because when I do the green screen with the lighting around, these lights tend to be pointed more like this, and then there's that light up there. And without the hat on, it has a hard time dealing with the top of my head, and I just found that the hat fixes it. Unfortunately, because this room gets so hot, it gets so sweaty. But hey, what are you going to do? The things we do to look professional, right? You know, Fluff. Well, no, you hide behind a dog. Which I haven't shown my daughter that yet, but all right. So that's going to be it for today. Tomorrow there's nothing on the schedule, but I think actually I'm going to do another one of these. Another creative stream. We'll see. I haven't decided yet. If Zoe gets home and doesn't have any homework, we may actually finally do the point and click game with her. So sometime tomorrow afternoon I'll be on, and in the morning I'll be doing my writing stream. So Fluff, it was fun hanging out with you. Cats, you too. No, I think it looks like you finally went offline. That's cool. Yeah. That's one thing about doing something like this, is you can talk while you do it. Just have to remember to drink every now and then, especially when you've got the developing cold. So anyway, we'll catch you on the next one. Be sure to, everybody, if you watch this afterwards, go follow InstaFluff. He's got a great voice and he's always fun to watch. So thanks, and we'll see you later.